Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to be continuing our series of shirim on the inner world of calmness, and we're going to try and trace back to the beginning of creation to find that place where calmness became a concept, where calmness became a possibility, and Memela, when calmness becomes a possibility, the opposite of calmness is also side by side with it, because the world of creation starts with the base of Bereshis, which represents a splitness at its core. Not a splitness because there's no unity, but because there's no unity accessible other than the unity of God. And Memela, Achas Dibra Aleichem Shtayim Zu Shamati, HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke once, and everything is going to be perceived through the split of human consciousness, human awareness. And so when we encounter the Torah, the first instantiation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light to illuminate the path of what this world actually is for us, the first thing we come encounter with is the base. That opens us up to the fact that as human beings, we are perpetually within a space of an echo, of an original or that was present and now absent, and it's our job to uncover the fact that its absence is only an apparent absence, and that in truth, that light still remains in a hidden way. But in order to trace the experience of the development of the human being and the surroundings of the human being to the point that we find ourselves at now, we have to return back to even before the creation of the individual and back to the space in which the individual is going to experience life. After HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates the first day, which is the separation between light and darkness, two separate entities. There's no confusion as to what light and darkness is. Light and darkness are objectifiable realities. Yes, there was an irbuvia, there was a bin hashmashos, a space where both intermingle that leads to a question of which is more valuable than the other, as Rashi already brings down in the name of Chazal. But ultimately, the distinction between light and darkness is a clear, vayon, vayilayla. There's a night and there's a day. There's a presence of light, there's an illumination, and there's an absence. There's no separation of something unified. There is the unification of two separate things. By the first day of creation, we encounter Yom and Laila, Choshech and Or. They are not confused with one another. They are intermingled. They're not intermingled to the degree that they're one and the same. Light is light and darkness is darkness. So the separation and the placing of light in its proper place and the placing of darkness in its proper place is not a minimization. It's not a splitting of the light or the darkness itself. We don't have this existent thing of light and darkness together and then we cut it and half goes to light, half goes to darkness. Light is a full thing in and of itself, and darkness as a creation, as the Gra points out, is a full thing in and of itself. So the first day is about arrangements. It's about being masader pre-existing elements. The whole of the light and the whole of the darkness is not undergoing any diminishment. There's no sense that the light has that, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose myself now because I'm being torn apart. The darkness is not thinking that either. The darkness is not saying, oh, I'm going to lose myself. Rather, the darkness remains the darkness, except its place in the place of darkness. That's the key tov of the Yom Echad. It's the entry point into reality, which says there's this and there's that, and both operate in their apparent isolation, and both have to commingle in a way that reveals a deeper unity. So there's no inherent separation of a unified thing. There's no splitting of a thing at the core of itself. There's no doubling of the thing. Each thing, light or darkness, remains singular, except now they're both placed in their proper places. Comes the second day of creation, and we encounter something entirely different. The Mayim, the Mayim b'Mayim, the inundation of waters that preceded creation, which is the shorish of the Tahom of creation, the abysmal depths of creation. The Ruach Elokim Rachepes al Panei HaMayim, that Mayim that is apparently there even before its own creation, even before its own revelation. And the Or HaChaim HaKadosh explains this clearly, that this kav, this ability of separating between the Mayim, was already created on the first day in a state of potential, and it only waited to come into actualization on the second day, which would explain how there was the pre-existence of water prior to the second day. But this water in water, this Mayim b'Mayim, is not a splintered thing. A body of water is a singular body. It is a unified whole. In spite of the fact that it might go in different directions and might go to different places, the ultimate truth of water is that it's a singular body, mayim b'mayim. Every ounce of water contains all possibilities of water because ultimately it is all so singularly unified to the degree that it's a chesed, which is mayim pashut. It's a pashut a thing. It's not a composite of two separate things. Mayim is flow. Mayim is something that seeks unity and self-same unity. It seeks the thing in and of itself without any differentiation, without any interruption whatsoever. The truth of mayim is that it continues to flow without any pushback or arresting of its flow. Mayim koizvim, false waters or waters that are untrue, are waters that stop flowing even once every 70 years. Because water in its essence is meant to be a unified singular flow that has no separation, that never needs to seek itself out. It never needed to find itself. It never needed to discover itself. It was what it was. It was an all unified and inundating flow of mayim. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes along on the second day, and unlike the first day where light remains light and darkness remains darkness, where neither one is split at its core, Vayomer Elokim Yihi Rekiya b'Seich HaMayim v'Yimavdil bein Mayim l'Mayim. Kadosh Baruch Hu places separation within the Mayim itself. Now, this is something entirely different, like we said, than the first day. The first day is a self-same unity that now is placed in a proper way. There's no anxiety, there's no fear of losing the self, and now I need to run after the self in order to find it again. Each thing contains itself and it remains itself. By Mayim, Mayim undergoes a fissure, Mayim undergoes a surgical nesira, a splitting at the core of it, a rikia that now stands in between two new elements of Mayim. That the Mayim Elyonim and the Mayim Tachtoinim, the Mayim Lamayim, the Mavdil ben Mayim Lamayim, these were originally a singular form of water, and now they've been split into two separate territories of water. Now one aspect of the water is above, and now one aspect of the water is below. But originally there was an irbuvia of the Mayim b'Mayim, that the Mayim is now undergoing the first instantiation that we see in reality of an actual split of something undergoing a compartmentalization where it is no longer fully itself. V'yas Elokim es rakia v'yavdil bein mayim, bein hamayim asher mitachas l'rakia u'bein hamayim asher me'al l'rakia v'hikein. And the rakia, this separation, this boundary that now creates an upper water and a lower water, a water that is above the rakia and a water that is below the rakia, it creates this separation. V'yikra Elokim rakia shamayim v'erev v'yiboker yom sheni. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu refers to this rakia as shamayim, the separation between the waters below and the waters above, and it was the second day. Now, famously, Chazal tell us, and Rashi brings down, that there is no utterance of ki tov on the second day, because ki tov is the emergence of machlokes. What is machlokes? Machlokes is the split at the heart of something that is meant to be unified. Water was originally meant to be unified. Water was meant to represent that flowing nature of unity where the thing is what it appears to be. There's no need to chase after something. There's no need to go out and earn what I actually am because I have already been what I am. I have all the potential within me. Mayim is always present to itself. All of it is present at the very same moment. But the splitting of the Mayim creates a separation where now we have to grapple with the fact that something that was self-same, something that knew itself in itself, something that had no need to search itself out and no need to create itself, no need to reorient itself, no need to remember a previous unity of itself, no need to go anywhere, but rather abiding like water, has now undergone a fissure and a split that now creates this deep gap between the upper water and the lower water, and this previous sense of unity of self, in this previous oceanic sense where I am fully contained within myself with no need to do anything because everything is here right now, splits into this mayim elyonim, mayim tachtonim, and it creates a bechia, it creates a crying, it creates a yearning desire to return back to that original unity. That this split of the mayim, this rakia bein mayim l'mayim, this orientation towards the splitness of something that was originally whole, something that does not take place on the first day of creation, because light remains whole and darkness remains whole. They're just placed in their places. But over here we have a singular previous whole of mayim, and there's an apparent split that's made that creates an above and a below, an expression and a reception. And it's here where the ga'aguim and the chuka and the pain of what it means to no longer feel that I am myself, no longer feel that I have everything within me, and what is born is a sense of separation that very naturally creates the next sense, which is an undying desire and craving to return back to that unity that I fell away from. The splitting of the water, the sherish of machlokes, the opening of Gehenim, which is this undying sense of I am not enough because I need to return back to a particular place that I once was, is all rooted in the rakia, in the separation between this original whole, which creates within the self a notion of there's something that needs to be retrieved. I lost something. Once I was mayim b'mayim. Once upon a time there was a unity of self, an oceanic sense of the ta'anug of mayim, as we're going to see, of the menucha of mayim, of mei menuchos. And then through this tzimtzum, The Gros, Chusi Hagen Aleinu, the Tyrus Chacham, they all identify this pasuk, the Rakia, as the secret of Tzimtzum, the separation between something that is unified to create the apparent distinction between the two. That as a result of this rakia, gone is that self-unity of mayim b'mayim, where I don't have to move anywhere, I don't have to earn, I don't have to try, because I am what I am plain and present like water, suddenly gives birth to this undying human cry towards mayim tachtoinim boichim. The mayim tachtoinim are undyingly desiring to return back to that original unity. What this does within the self is that it gives me a sense that I once was a certain way, I'm no longer that way, and then I need to return back to that way. It's the birth of effort. It's the birth of the notion that there is an original state of unity that was once present, that is no longer present, and what that creates and in marks indelibly within the human spirit, which desires perfection so much, is that I now need to return back to that original perfection. And what is born is the divide or the wrestling match or the grappling between the Mayim Elyonim and the Mayim Tachtonim. This sense that I now need to go out and search how to be myself. I need to go out and earn it. I need to put effort in. Like we said, the shirish of menucha, the truth of menucha is when something is at its source, when something is as it is in its most idealized form without any need to actually express itself, because there is a full awareness that the expression and the potential are both equally full when it comes to the experience of menucha. Because like we said, menucha is never going to be a situation where I feel that there's nothing left for me to gain. There will always be something left to gain. And if I view my life in that perspective of ownership and perpetual movement in the capitalistic system of production and experience, then there will be no menucha. Menucha is a choice that a person chooses to live with when they sit down and they say, everything is here right now, whether or not it's manifested or whether it remains in a state of potential. This is menucha because the whole thing is contained within itself. But when there's a split, and there's a separation between the shoresh and the expression of something, now the shoresh, the root of how something is, the way that I feel most naturally within myself, now feels that it needs to express itself outward. It needs to earn, it needs to cover ground, it needs to arrive at a certain destination in order to experience the fullness of what life offers. The shoresh is no longer enough. There's no longer a sense of fullness within actuality, of the koyach itself. What is born within that separation of the mayim bin mayim lamayim, which is the separation between potential and actualization, is now this human tendency to need to actualize every form of potential in order for potential to feel actual. And what that covers over is the deepest truth of Ruchnius, which is that the koyach is a real metzias. Koyach doesn't need to be expressed in a real way in order for it to be real. It can be expressed simply by being a potential that is acknowledged, and it can be a real thing. It's not measurable like something real in reality, but it's real within the soul because it is an indelible experience that fills the soul with a moment of hashra'ah, of awareness of God, which is what we said, the name Menucha. But because we live so far from that ideal, what we place ourselves in is this perspective now that there's a separation between the shoresh and the outgrowth. There's a separation between the state of pure potential and the need towards actualization, and the distance between potential towards actualization and all of the manios and preventions and struggles and resentments that fall along the path of that experience is where tsar is born, is where the opposite of menucha is born. And all of this comes about by the splitting of the water, by the apparent splitting of the water. What Rashi explains in terms of the splitting of the water is something absolutely incredible. Now, why doesn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why doesn't the Torah write that, and it was good? Good represents a unity of something on the second day. Because in truth, the completion of the waters and the full expression of these waters was not completed until the next day on Yom HaShlishi. V'harei hitchil ba b'sheni, but it began on the second day. V'davar shelo nigmar einoi b'milua v'tovo, and something that is incomplete does not stand in its fullness and its goodness. This mitzias of something that is incomplete, does not feel as full or as good as something in its completed form, is already present at the creation of the world. This is not just a symptom of Chet of the Eitz Hadas, where this reality of the separation between potential and actualization, between Shirish and Anaf, between the roots of something where it rests in its menucha state versus the need for tnua or movement out of its essential state for the sake of self-expression, this is already baked into the very fabric of existence prior to any Chet. The human experience, as we've spoken about so often, especially when it comes to the vicissitudes of the self and the need to uncover the secret movement that rests at the core of the Jewishness of our souls, that is perpetually actively motivating and trying to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we don't need to come upon an original chait, God forbid, in order to place the human being in the position of operating within this sense of disunity and tension. The very fact that we're created, the very fact that we're born, as we've spoken about so often, is enough of a reason for the individual to feel quote unquote traumatized and in this splitness of potential and actualization between root and expression, between unity and separation. And we see this in the narrative of the Torah Kedosha, that this is already inherent within the second days. This was already inherent in the first day. The Mayim was already there. The Tehom was already there. The Beis of Bereshis was already there. That symptom always already happened because if we're speaking or conscious about it, it's already operating in the space of two-ness or splitness because the only true achdus is applicable to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the rest of our lives is operant in trying to retrieve that original unity and coming to peace with it. But over here, we already see that the potential towards the human condition of this splitness between how I am in this present moment and the need to become more than I am in this present moment, which is the beginning of being taken out of menucha in our understanding. We have to be aware of the fact that this is not some symptom of some failure, but rather this is the very condition of what it means to be a human being. That this unfinished nature of the Mayim, the fact that the Mayim was not fully completed is what gives birth to the split. It's what gives birth to this new separation between Mayim Tachtoinim and Mayim Elyonim, between the self in its actuality and the self in its potential form. Where prior to the separation, Mayim b'Mayim, I knew the true secret of Menucha, which is that everything I possibly need rests at the core, even without actual expression. That Hakol hu b'Kol, everything is here, and Shakai sheyesh dai be'elukus l'chol bria v'bria, and there's enough in each and every thing with no need to actualize itself. It's an ava she'ena tluya b'davar. And now I fall into this place of Mayim b'Mayim. I fall into the splitness of this separation, and what it creates is this notion that something is incomplete. The human sense of incompletion that is born, again, not as the result of some failure, not as the result of some chait, but from the very condition of the human being, is in truth the main framework in which we're going to need to find menucha. Like we said, v'yat sichmo lispol. When Yisachar believes that there's schar, when Yisachar understands the secret of menucha, the secret of calmness, the secret of understanding that when something feels that it is in its right place, b'makomo ubezmano, and that it is not deficient in anything that takes it away from being valuable in this moment. Yes, the sense of deficiency that propels me to want to grow more will always be present, hopefully, in the healthiest way, which is the secret of tzadikim ein lehem menucha loy ba'olam hazeh v'loy ba'olam haba, shenemar hoilchem michayil al-chayil. But prior to getting to that place of the tzadikim in Mirz Hashem at the end of these shirim, we first and foremost have to encounter the struggle that is born out of this. The struggle that is born out of this sense now that I am no longer enough at my root, I am no longer enough in myself, and now I need to put in effort. And what effort means is effort for the sake of arriving at something. And what the desire to arrive at something means is that without arriving there, while I'm still at the point prior to the destination, I am not yet enough. I am not yet whole. I am not yet okay in this moment. And it is that separation between the okayness of potential and the sense that I'm only okay in the state of actualization that sets the human being on this path of the difficulty of being human. And again, this is not something to shy away from. Chazal have already told us, it would have been more pleasant for a person to have not been created to have been created. But as the Ishbitzer Tzadikim point out, that make sure that we always remember that the word that is applicable here is noyach, but it doesn't say mutav. Yes, to be created is difficult because to be created is to begin to be split into two, to have this experience of a rakia, hamavdil ben mayim lamayim, not the separation of the light from the darkness, which is one and one. That's a difficult concept to manage to figure out, but if we study kigavna, lamave echad be'echad, one thing is unified, we could come to understand it. The second day of creation, the birth of separation or apparent separation, where we don't say kitov because it's not finished yet, and there's an undying sense of I haven't completed something yet. That is the very reason Rashi is saying that the second day is not called good, because there's a lingering sense of impending responsibility that needs to be accomplished in order for me to feel valuable about myself, in order for me to feel okay about myself. I can no longer find the self-assurance and the self-containment of wholeness within the self. I now need to express it. I now need to earn it. I now need to prove it to myself. I now need the authentication of others. I now search for that orientation of applause and acknowledgement, v'chule, v'chule, all of the different things that take a person out of their world being their root source. The root source is where menucha is found. Kina taiva and kavod, moitzi ha'adam and ha'olam, they take me out of my ability to live in Gan Eden, in this world, because they orient me towards this undying desire that I need to be more in order to be okay. And all of this comes from the separation of the second day. And this is, in truth, the ultimate secret of birth. The human being is born into this state. The state of the womb-like state, is mayim b'mayim. It's the unity of water prior to the creation of the world, where mayim was b'mayim and everything was there. And the child in utero was able to see mesoifa olam ad soifa, meaning to say anywhere a person looked, they saw everything. Everything was contained in everything. There was no difference between soifa olam ad soifa, because the end was the beginning and the beginning was the end. It was the oceanic sense of mayim b'mayim. And the emergence of birth out of that place of saturation with ein mayim el Torah, and operating in that fluid of that safe place of bina, that comfortable place of floating where everything is unified, that mei menuchos. So what happens is that birth comes about, then forgetfulness sets in. It's the birth of, I have now seen a separation between potential and actualization. I have forgotten everything, and now I know that I have to put effort in. And this cry that the neshama lets out, as the Zohar Kadosh says, and the tzaddikim of Ishbitz utilize so often, is that this cry of the neshama and the mother as the birth is taking place, as that water is being expressed, is ultimately one of the cries that reverberate throughout the very fabric and texture of reality, because it is such a difficult and powerful one. The need for effort, the adal la'amal yulad, the secret of Amelus is built into the very fabric of being a human being. Amelus lives between the separation of pure potential that contains all things, which is mayim b'mayim, and the separation between potential and actualization, as Rabbi Nachman describes by mayim b'mayim in Torah Nun Aleph. And once that separation is there, now we live in the gap of the opposite of menucha. Now we live in that struggle. Now we live in that need for that cry, the bechia of the mayim tachtoinim, of anan ba'il mehave kadam malka, that the entire orientation now is the sense of we're split and we want to return back to something. It's the undoing of menucha, which is the secret that everything is present right here, right now, in any given moment. This is not some lofty spiritual level for a person to find. In fact, this is something that is accessible to a person, or the notion of it, at any moment. In that place, in that kapitel Tehillim, where a person even encounters the shadows of death, there's still the opportunity to re-enter into that place of mei menuchos, that sense of unity prior to separation. But as we just said, this very thing that hints to us the secret of menucha, this mayim b'mayim, this original mayim b'mayim, this unity of water, what's referred to as mei ein sof, prior to any distinction, where potential and actualization, where root and expression were unified to the degree that I didn't have to go out or do anything. I was okay abiding within myself with the self-wholeness that exists within me in the chelek Elokai mimal, in that secret of Gan Eden, of yoishvim b'itrasayim b'reishayim, of not needing to go anywhere, of being in a place of chai menucha, and the Shabbos of menucha. We now understand that to be in this world and uncover that secret, it can't be a simple menucha. That simple menucha is inaccessible. Like we said last week, if it were a simple menucha, then it wouldn't be menucha. Menucha in this world for the human being is one that is born out of yagia, one that is born out of effort. And so what we see now is, first and foremost, there's the split between the mayim b'mayim, which reveals this duality of al toimru mayim mayim. There's going to be now what appears to be a split between mayim elyonim and mayim tachtonim, where I feel that I need to earn something, prove something, be more than I am in order to be valuable and calm within myself and confident within myself, without the need to move, without the need to go out further. The shorish of menucha, the Metzudas David says in Kapitel Kuf Lam and Gimel, is no longer needing to walk from one place to another. I know exactly where I'm at, and we're going to see this as we get into the sugi of Kayin Be'ezus Hashem in future shirim. But the secret of menucha is that I can return back to that mei menuchos. I can return back to that place. But as we said, it needs to come about through the splitting of the water. That vayar menucha kitov, I want menucha, I want that original unity of the water, vayatzich molispol, and now I prepare myself to bear the burden of this world, which is the opposite of menucha, so too with the waters. I want the water of menucha, I want the mei menuchos, memela, I am now going to have to understand the split between the sense of potential and actualization, wholeness and separation, or mayim elyonim and mayim tachtoinim. And ultimately, what this orientation towards Mayim is going to bring us to is that Mayim represents the fact that, yes, things appear split. Yes, the water can go here and there could be many kavim of Mayim. But ultimately, Kol hanachalim holchem el hayam v'hayam einenu malay. That in the end of the day, all of the separation of Mayim, all of the various disintegrations of that previous unity of potential and actualization will ultimately return back to a unity that is even greater than itself. Because the secret of Mayim b'Mayim, when it was only water, when it was only Menucha, so Mayim, the Balatanya tells us, is the shirish of all ta'anugim. A person doesn't really have to think so much about that. A person senses that. The utilization of water in the proper way, the quenching that water offers, the relaxation and the cleansing nature of water, and the comfort that water offers a person is so undeniably rooted in the world of Tainug. It's so undeniably rooted in the loftiest place, what the neshama desires most, because as the Vitebsker Schusi Aganalenu says, someone very much makusher to the calmness of water, as we're going to see, as the Vitebsker says, that the shirish neshama of Klal Yisrael is oilam tainug. We come from the truest place of pleasure, and therefore every ounce of ourselves is yearning back to that forgotten pleasure. And God forbid when we find secondary or alternative pleasures that seem to fill the place in some objectified, substance-oriented way for the true tainug of the hiskashrus amiti and the bittul to the mei ein sof, to the waters of the infinite kavyachol, to the infinite waters of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light in the language of the Eitz Chaim Kadisha. And the Vitebsker says that we come from that place of oineg. And the Balatanya, who learned so much from the Vitebsker mipi Seifrim V'Svarim, understands that the shirish of Mayim is the shirish of Tainug, that water represents Tainug. And Tainug is when something feels that it is in its proper place. Tainug emerges when a person feels that they are where they need to be and that the circumstances align for them to feel that I don't need to rush anywhere. That is Tainug. Tainug is the ability to sit comfortably where I am and experience the deepest pleasure, which is the pleasure of self-abidement in the exact moment, of being present, of hashra'ah. I am here right now. I don't need to run anywhere. There is nothing bothering me. To the degree that if one is conscious of their Tainug, then they're probably not fully present in their Tainug, as the tzaddikim of Chabad say, because the truest form of Tainug is one that is so deep that I'm not even aware of it. I'm not even reflecting on it. It's a Tainug HaNe'elam. It's an absolute absence of any feeling. It's simply the presence of Mayim b'Mayim, of Menucha, of no need to move. Of no need to move from the Shairesh to the Anaf, of no need for Tnua, no need for movement, no need for running around. And so to seek that out in the water, to seek that out in the chesed, to seek that out in the secret of all things being unified, is a very natural place to seek out that menucha. But the menucha is the unity of the water that comes about after the splitting of the water. The menucha is the menucha that comes about when I realize that even though the water split up, even though I now live within the gap of potential towards actualization, even though there are now going to be waves of water and the chaos of water, even though it's now going to be a mayim, it's going to be a splitness that I no longer have the ability to handle. Even though when I try and confront those waters of calmness and try and bring them back into my life, like David HaMelech does when he goes down to the basement of the Beis HaMikdash at the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, the secret of drawing the secret of water back up into the Beis HaMikdash, what David HaMelech encounters is the Tehom that wants to ascend and inundate the world again, because this secret of Menucha, of the unity of true Menucha, of Menucha L'chayo Elamim, is so inundating and so overwhelming that the human mind can't handle it. The human mind has to experience Menucha specifically by way of the encounter with the opposite of Menucha, the same way that Tainug can only be experienced through the opposite of Tainug. Mayim represents Tainug Tamidi Enon Tainug. It represents the secret that perpetual pleasure is no longer pleasurable. If I was always in a state of calmness without any need to move beyond myself to accomplish something or to earn or to become myself through my own self-volitional choices, through the koach that HaKadosh Baruch Hu breathed into me at every moment to choose to become myself more and more, in spite of the fact that that appears to be a severing of the unity between potential and actualization and a descent into the opposite of menucha. In truth, it's specifically where menucha is going to be found, because at the core of all effort, at the core of all engagement, at the core of all hishtadlus and amelus, there adayin rests that secret of mayim b'mayim. There still rests that point of the mind, that point in the brain of the unity between that sea creature, the Levyasan, which is Zachar and Nekeva, that rests and it occupies the cerebral spinal fluid, the fluid of our brain that reorients me, the das that tells me all of the various circumstances, all of the changes, all of the shifts between who I feel I am and what I feel I need to do, where I feel comfortable and where I feel uncomfortable, and all of the steps that need to be taken in order to make myself more comfortable. All of the vast distances between potential and actualization, all of the distances between completion and the need towards completion. Yes, all of those seem to take away from the unified sense of Mayim b'Mayim, of the menucha of Mayim, of the comfort of Mei Menuchos, of that Olam HaTainug. But in truth, it's specifically in and through these interruptions and the kaveh hamayim that open up and the various channels in which the flow of water takes place in our lives. It is the unity that continues to exist in spite of the separation that gives birth to the truest giloy of tainug. The secret of tainug tamidi eno tainug, but it's the secret of the hischadshus that takes place within tainug tamidi. The mayim remains mayim b'mayim. The separation of the mayim is only apparent to my eyes. As Rabbi Akiva tells his talmidim, al tomru mayim mayim, don't say mayim mayim, ki davar sheker lo yamu l'neged einav. In truth, there's no actual separation between actuality and potential. In truth, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did on the second day of creation, he didn't split the water. He revealed how the splitting of something into two is simply there to bring about a higher level of unity that shows how the two merge into one again and again and again, showing how actual duplicitousness and separation is never actual. And that, yes, I need to put in Yegiya, but at the very same point, I don't have to go anywhere. And like we said on the first week, that the secret of Menucha is finding Menucha within the Yegiya, drawing the secret of Mayim b'Mayim, of Mei Menuchos, of Olam HaTainug, into the process of not feeling Tainug necessarily, of effort, and realizing that this effort that I'm putting in now, this desire to become more, is not going to define me to the degree that if I don't accomplish more, then I am no longer a valuable person. But it is an attempt for me to move out beyond the expanses of water to test the possibility of finding even more opportunities, like Noach Hatzadik, who sent the Yonah out, to find the secret of Menucha, to find the place to rest. After the Mayim b'Mayim, there needed to be a place to find more Menucha. And that's Yonah Matzah by Manoach. Sham Yanucha Yegiye Koyach. It's specifically through the Yegiye Koyach that a person experiences in the split between Mayim b'Mayim and all of the different waters of each and every day, and the koilos of the Mayim that we sing about, come Shabbos. It's all for the purpose of revealing Yoina Matzah by Manoyach v'Sham Yanucha Yegiye Koyach. It's only through the Yegiye Koyach, the separation of the Mayim b'Mayim, and the opening into Mayim Elyonim and Mayim Tachtoinim, that gives birth to the possibility of calmness. And this Yoina is also Yonah ben Amitai, who finds himself in the chaos of the sea, who finds himself at the depth of the water, swallowed by the sea creature itself, and he finds the secret of the center there. He finds the secret of the Menucha that's going to come about through effort itself, and the effort that is going to be found in the secret of Menucha. And what Yonah ben Amitai does is he shows us what happens in the chaos, of that ship that's about to sink in the flowing waves of the water, of that mayim, that doubled nature of water, where there's a mayim elyonim, mayim tachtoinim, and the tahoimos are flowing and the waves are shattering across the mind, and I feel that I need to be this, that, or the other thing in order to be valuable to this, that, or the other person. At that point, what Yonah ben Amitai does is he enters into a state of bittul muchletes. He goes to sleep. He goes to sleep like Chizkiyahu HaMelech, who goes to sleep, like Adam HaRishon, who goes to sleep, like Klal Yisrael, who go to sleep on Erev Shabbos, like Klal Yisrael, who go to sleep on Leil Shavuos. The secret of Shena, the secret of entering into a place of Menucha, where I realize that yes, I have to put in the Yagiyah, but ultimately the outcome of the Yagiyah is not my own, and it takes so much of the pressure off. Let me sleep, let me dream. Ani Shena v'libi air, let me turn off the stress manuals that demand that every ounce of effort that I put in need arrive at the intended destination, and let me put in my hishtadlus, let me rest, let me minimize the presence of my own demands on myself, which are very often the repetitive thought distortions that are developed from the infinite echoes of past generations upon generations. Let me try and silence that for a second and realize that yes, Yegiya is necessary because there's a separation between Mayim Elyonim and Mayim Tachtoinim, and I need to try and recover that original unity. I need to move away from myself in order to find myself in a healthy way again. But let me come to realize that the separation between leaving myself and eventually arriving at myself again with a new sense of fullness need not be one that is the opposite of menucha. I can move with menucha when I'm aware that the movement is not the thing that my sense of self depends upon, and that the unity of self and that the mayim b'mayim, because of the chelek alokai mimal mamish and the shirish of nishmas Yisrael, which is rooted in the olam atainug, when I'm aware of that, when I'm aware of that menucha muchletes that rests at the core of every yid, which is the secret of what happens on Shalosh Shuddis, by the highest time we say that we demand HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us menucha. We want menucha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem gives us menucha, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu's makadesh his shame on our menucha. What do you mean you just gave us that menucha? But the secret of the menucha of a yid is the most basic and true thing in the world. It's the shoresh being full of itself in that moment with no need to leave. That's always there. And then with that awareness, we can then go down into Yordei Hayam Ba'anios, to descend down into the various streams of water and discomfort and all of the separations between Mayim Elyonim and Mayim Tachtoinim. And we can then come to find the secret of calmness and the secret of tainug within its very opposite, where we come to realize that, yes, it might not say ki tov on the second day, but ki tov on the second day is going to be doubled on the third day. There needs to be a pause of not knowing the kitovness in order to fully appreciate the simcha of menucha. Because if I never leave the shoresh with the sense that I need to go accomplish something in order to truly be valuable, I'll never return back to the shoresh and come to realize that, wow, there was absolutely nothing I ever needed to do in order to make myself valuable, because I am infinitely valuable. Nishmas Yisrael, ola b'machshava tchila. And that secret of the Yigiyah, that secret of the process, going into descending down into the water. And then we're going to see that out of Gan Eden is also this process of the Nahar Yotzimi Eden V'Yaspardu La'arba Roshim. It splits up. Water in and of itself was the original way that civilization went from one place to another. The development of civilization was built upon the transference between here and over there. It's the opposite of Menucha. Water is what enables something to move from its place to another place. But in its source, it represents the presence of all things. And this stira of the Mayim Elyonim and the Mayim Tachtonim is ultimately the secret that it's through the apparent split of the waters and the need for effort and arriving at a goal that will come to reveal that even in the effort itself, I was still able to be calm like water. I was still able to find Mei Menuchos. I was still able to connect to the Olam of Tainug. And the secret of Tainug to me, the Eno Tainug. Menucha to me, this Eno Menucha. And therefore, the Menucha comes about by the shift from Menucha into a state of E-Menucha and then a return back to Menucha. Like Yosef HaTzadik, like the Dagei Hayam, who don't have to close their eyes, the Zohar Kadosh says. Closing of the eyes and reopening of the eyes is a reorientation to reality on a perpetual level. The fish live in a place where they don't have to look over and over. They have a singular way of vision. I am a descendant of Yosef HaTzadik, who no evil eye falls upon, because he's like a fish in the sea that has its eyes always open. It's one eye. It's a singular eye of menucha v'simcha. But in truth, the Yid is not a fish, and the secret of the Levyasan is that, yes, there's the possibility of Tainuk Tamidi, as the Beis Yaakov points out. But the secret of a Yid is that it could be a fish on dry land. It could live the world of Mayim and Yabasha at the same time. Hafech le'am Yabasha. To find within the Menucha the ability to put effort in, and to find within the effort the secret of Menucha. Now, what is this Mayim Tachtonim Boichim? This Mayim Tachtonim Boichim is that our separated sense of self, which leaves us feeling that I need to arrive at a particular place prior to feeling that I am okay to be okay, because there's so many things that I need to check off the list. Now, that orientation towards the development of motivation to behavior is one that is contingent upon the successful completion of those tasks. And obviously, that is important and fundamental to day-to-day living. But when it comes to the fundamental way of approaching our spiritual identity, which rests at the core of how we engage in life, we cannot be so open with ourselves in these faulty modes of thinking. Because if there's a crack in the yesod, then there's a crack in everything. And in the place of spiritual identity and development, one must come to terms with realizing that b'shayroshenu, that the menucha muchletas that we could allow ourselves to experience would not deviate one iota from the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere revealed in Nishmas Yisrael. And Lu Yitzur, if we had the capacity to pay attention to that inner place of menucha, a person can quite literally rest within the Gan Eden in their minds. But ultimately, we live in a world of the Mayim Tachtonim Boichim, a sense that I want to come closer to you, Rebbeinu Shleilim. It's a yawning across the abysmal divide between who I am and where I want to be, or more often than not, who I am, or who I think I am, or who I've been told that I am, and what I assume others want me to be. And God willing, will break free that cycle and come to the place of who I am and who HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to be. And in that place of the Mayim Tachtonim Boichim, it's not that there's Mayim Tachtonim and that then they're crying because they want to yearn upwards. The very Metzius, the very fabric of Mayim Tachtonim, the very foundation of a soul that feels separate, and in the opposite stage of Menucha, where it is fully calm within itself because it knows that it has an inherent wholeness within itself prior to any need to actualize itself. In that place, when I leave that place, the only thing I could do is a bechia, is a crying out. Crying out is a gesture which is also oriented towards water, expressed in water, but it's an opposite type of water. It's a water that leads to more desire. It's a salty water. But that water is oriented towards the fact that I need you, Ribbon Shleilim. In this world without you, I need you. I need you. I need you. I need more of you. I need more of you. I need more of you. And that bechia is the source of all discomfort. The source of all discomfort is the sense that I am yearning for something and I know not what. But if we were to come to the place of understanding where the bechia is in truth coming from, and we could understand that the true bechia, that motivation that propels me from one place to another, searching for a place that I can rest my head, is ultimately the secret of Mayim Tachtonim Boichim, that's my Metzias. I am the lower waters, apparently separated from the higher waters, and every breath and every step and every essence of myself is simply another expression of I want to come closer to you, Rebbeinu Shleilim. And there we are transforming the separation that takes away the menucha into something that creates moments of menucha. Al mei menuchos yinahaleni. You lead me along calm waters. Not calm waters because there's no movement to the waters, not calm waters because there's no waves to the waters, but calm waters because even within the waves, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you calm the waves. There's a calmness in the waves themselves, as Rabbi Akiva teaches, that every wave that arises, a person can bend their head and find menucha in the heart of that opposite of menucha. Why? Because in truth, there's no actual separation between the Mayim Elyonim and the Mayim Tachtonim. In truth, it is an apparent separation that makes me feel that when I'm not at peace, I have lost the peace of myself. I have lost that menuchas hanefesh. But the truth of the reality is that menuchas hanefesh is not a conditional reality. It's at a place that exists fundamentally within the self prior to any separation of Mayim Elyonim and Mayim Tachtonim. And when I come to realize that, then I'll come to realize that all separation between Mayim Elyonim and Mayim Tachtonim, upper water and lower water, potential and actualization, pure calmness that contains all within itself and a sense of deficiency that is perpetually running towards finding more for itself, that there always exists a secret of Mayim b'Mayim, b'Leiv Yam, that Yonah ben Amitai finds, that ability to go to sleep, to rest oneself, to stop running when it feels that I have to run the most. After, of course, that I've serenity prayer each situation, a person who tries to apply this calmness in circumstances where effort is demanded of them is going to find a negative response. But a person who's trying to put effort in where calmness is demanded is going to find themselves running up against a wall. So the proper utilization of both in the right time is fundamental, which is the secret of the wisdom to know the difference. The application of menucha, which is why still we don't live in a zman of full menucha. Shabbos is a taste of menucha. But in order to uncover that secret of the Menucha of Shabbos, we have to enter in and appreciate the disunification and the disorientation towards calmness that exists throughout the 6 days. The Ishbitzer Tzadikim points something incredible out based on the Tikkunei Zohar, that when we're being Shabeach HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Halalukas, so we speak of the Mayim Me'al HaShamayim that are praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the tzaddikim point out, where is the mayim shemitachas hashamayim? We live in a world of split waters. We live in a separation between potential actualization and the actualization of potential. We live separated between the true knowledge that I am okay in spite of anything going on, and that I don't need to do anything in order to be okay. And from that place, I can learn to cultivate a sense of healthy, becoming more and more okay in each and every moment, versus a sense that I am not okay and I'm never okay unless I do X, Y, or Z. The separation between that, in the moment of praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the moment of shevach, in the moment of gratitude, in the moment of recognizing and bending my head into each and every wave, like Rabbi Akiva teaches us, because he understood the secret that it's not water and water, but in truth, it's a singular flow of water. That the secret over here is that when we're praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no such thing as the lower waters. The distinction goes away. The distinction between effort and actualization, the distinction between the deserving calmness versus not deserving calmness, that separation falls away, and a person realizes that I am calm because I am choosing to be calm right now. Zois menuchasi, I'm going to sit here and desire my calmness. In that moment of demanding HaKadosh Baruch Hu, suddenly the separation of the Mayim Elyonim and the Mayim Tachtonim dissipates, and we realize once again that it's Mayim b'Mayim. We realize once again that it's a Tainug Tamidi, that even the moments of the opposite of Menucha, even the moments of where I have to gird myself and prepare myself to feel the need for effort, to put myself into the face of that milchama of this world, where it says, Noach leila adam shelo nivra yoter mishenivra, I can still find menucha there. It's the secret of the Mei Menuchos. Mei implies the separation of waters. We're no longer in that place of the Olam HaTainug. We're no longer in that singular unified place of calmness of spirit that has everything it needs without any need to shift or orient itself out of itself. But it's specifically within that place of the riboy of Mayim, of the separation of Mayim, in the waves of Mayim, that will come to understand the true secret of Mei Menuchos, that it's specifically in the entryway into separation, into the opposite of Menucha, into the need to descend down into that place of yearning, that will come to properly understand the secret of Menucha, will come to understand that every ounce of Bechia, every ounce of yearning is simply what Rabbi Nachman describes as B'shimcha Yagilun Kol Hayom, Roshei Tevos Bechia, that in truth, every cry that is rooted in a place of having lost Menucha and wanting to return back to Menucha through trying to shift my circumstances or be more than I actually am, will be saddled and satisfied with the recognition that all I've ever been doing is crying out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All I've ever been doing is yearning for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in that place, I'm tasting Olam Haba already. I'm tasting the Yabasha and the Yam and the Yam and the Yabasha. As Chazal tell us that this world is compared to the Yabasha and Olam Haba is compared to the Mayim. But as we said last week, that any element of Menucha that we find is a taste of Gan Eden, which is the secret of Olam Echater B'Chayacha, which means that by tasting water in this world, by realizing in the splitness of all waters that there's a singular unity of Mayim, and that either way I read it, Mem Yud Men from the beginning to the end, or Mem Yud Men from the end to the beginning, whichever perspective I look at, both Mayims, the Or Choizer that ascends from the bottom back up, or the Or Yasha that comes from above down below, both of them can give me access to that secret of Mayim b'Mayim. And with eyes of gratitude upon a person's circumstance and a willingness to tolerate the struggle for Menucha as the prerequisite for Menucha, we begin to taste the light of Menucha. There's a very strange story that I'm preparing for this year. I feel that I have a little bit more to contemplate on it. A very strange story that in Rabbi Nachman's desire to come to Eretz Yisrael, knowingly that trip was the opposite of Menucha. Rabbi Nachman put himself into a katnish, shabakatness, into a smallness of all smallness, and a separation upon separation upon separation in apparent sense. And the story goes that prior to his arrival to the ship that would take him to Eretz Yisrael, he encountered a tzaddik who gave him a holy name that would help him deal with the waves on the sea. And that name was Ata. That name was you, referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as you. And the Masorah is that the pasuk says, "B'shov galavativ teshabchem," that at the end, when there are waves that are raging, when there are waves that are raging in the sea, and creating that chaos and that bilbil of the mayim, where that menucha is no longer present, and so waves that Yonah ben Amittai had to fight against in order to find the secret of menucha within the waves. So in that name of Ata, it can settle the waves on the sea. And who taught him this name? So this is where it gets strange. This name that calms the waves of the sea, meaning to say helps us find the secret of Menucha, even in the apparent opposite of Menucha, because the sea is the desire for Mayim b'Mayim, Menucha Shlema. The waves of the sea are the separations of the sea, the distinction between Mayim Elyon and Mayim Tachtonim, the Galei Hayam that Rabbi Akiva knew how to bend his head to at each and every moment, which is the secret of the descent away from Menucha for the sake of re-entering into a deeper state of Menucha, which is the separation of the second day, only to be revealed on the third day with a double level of goodness. And that name was given to him by Rav Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk. What was and who was Rav Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk? Rav Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk was not only one of the main Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov who finally made it to Eretz Yisrael, Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov and the Talmud of the Maggid, I believe, but I could be wrong. Rav Menachem Mendel Vitebsker made it to Eretz Yisrael, and he settled in the land of Tiberia. Now, Tiberia, as we've spoken about, is the land correspondent to Mayim. The calmness of Tiberia, the place where Mashiach arrives from, the waters of Tiberia, the sweet smell of the waters of Tiberia, the blueness of Tiberia, the blueness of the sea that orients a person to the Tachlis, Ha'amiti, that the sea, the Mayim, reminds me of the Kisei HaKavod, which is the Shirish of Nishmas Yisrael, which allows me to live with the true calmness that is rooted in the Olam HaTainug of my neshama, is the place of Tiberia, the place of water, the place of calmness and an orientation towards water. And we've known the story about Rav Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, that there was a time where they announced Mashiach had come, that true Menucha had returned, true Shalom had returned, true Tainug had returned, and they came running to Rav Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, and he smelled the air. He had to get up from his stender. He got up, looked out the window, smelled the air, and he said, "No, Mashiach hasn't arrived. True Menucha hasn't arrived yet." And the Talmidim later come and they say, "Rebbe, we believe you, but why did you have to get up?" And Rav Menachem Mendel Vitebsk said, because here it's Gan Eden already. And this secret is shaykh to the secret of Mayim b'Mayim. This secret is shaykh to being in Tiberia, where the Mayim of Tainug is present, with the full knowledge that one can taste that full Tainug in the present moment. One can access that menucha of me menuchos, of the tainug of mayim, of the knowledge that I don't have to go anywhere, that the mayim is b'mayim, that everything is there. Every ounce of water contains every other drop of water imaginable. Everything is in everything. And when I uncover the secret of those yichudim of mayim, of uncovering the more from within myself perpetually, and allow my heart to flow forth like water, shivchi kamayim libich, nechach pnei Hashem, in that place I'm mamshich more mayim duchrin from above. This mayim, this desire of mayim above, and the unflowing of water below, the truest secret is they're both one and the same, that we desire and we yearn, and then our yearning and desire comes back down to us in the guise of the spiritual illumination that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends down to us, which just gives us strength for more desire. The secret of menucha within the opposite of menucha. The secret of tainug within the opposite of tainug. And it's only Rav Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk who understands the secret of the fact that there are waves within the sea, and this is the name of how to overcome the waves within the sea that will give you access to Eretz Yisrael. That's the name that he gave to Rabbi Nachman, B'derech Efshar, and it's the secret of Ata. It's the secret of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You are here with me at every moment, whether it's menucha or whether it's not, whether it feels like Mayim Elyonim or Mayim Tachtonim, because the deepest secret is that when there's a moment of Shevach and presence of mind to the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Rebbeinu Shloim, in that place of Chayim Menucha, in that place of Menuchas Kitoiv, in that place we find that all there ever has been is Mayim b'Mayim. All there is the Mayim Elyonim. And in truth, all of our yearning and the opposite of Menucha is the incubator upon which we learn to tolerate the experience of feeling a concealed experience of Menucha to properly experience those moments of calmness as they emerge and drip into our lives, Be'ezras Hashem.